Good evening, everyone. I'm calling today's Plan Commission regular meeting for June 3rd. If I can get everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United
States
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Margaret, if you can do roll call, please.
Mr. Burleson?
Here.
Ms. Cardona?
Here.
Mr. Gill?
Here.
Mr. Gillette?
Mike Gillette here.
Ms. Little?
Here.
Ms. Woodland?
Here.
Mr. Kennedy?
Here.
Mr. Eberley?
Here.
Mr. Kraus?
I heard him before.
All right. Sometimes the online takes a little longer. Attorney Decker?
Here.
Mr. Panzik?
Here.
And anyone else on site that I need to log in?
I think that's good,
Okay,
Margaret.
thank you.
We have a quorum. Before I go to minutes, I want to thank everybody that is here in person and who is online. For our board members, we have been advised before you speak, if you could please give your name, that will help with the minutes and to allow the public to know who is speaking. So board members, please acknowledge with your name first. I will try my best to acknowledge you, but please, you might have to jump in if you want to say something. So I'm the youngest of 7, so don't be bashful. I'm a big family. To the general public, it's a new normal, and we are doing our best to continue town business as we move through this. We're going to have some hiccups, so I'm going to ask you for your patience in advance, and thank you for, as we try to move through this and continue the business of the town. So with that, we will go on to minutes, and if I can get a motion for regular meeting minutes for February 5th, if we can make a motion on that.
Make a motion for regular meeting minutes, February 5th, 2020.
I have a motion to accept.
I'll second Bob's
I
motion.
second.
That was Yolanda, I believe. Yolanda, we have a second. All in favor to approve minutes for February 5th, 2020, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I believe we have to have roll call vote because we have virtual and live members. Is that correct?
Margaret, you are on top of things. Thank you
Yes,
very
I agree.
much. So, Margaret, we will do roll call. Thank you.
Mr. Burleson?
Here, or, yes.
Ms. Cardona?
I agree.
Mr. Gill?
I agree.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Ms. Little?
Yes.
Ms. Woodland?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes. See, first item, we have a hiccup already, so. For March 4th, 2020, if I can get a deferral for the March 4th, 2020 meeting minutes. I did not have an opportunity to review those.
Mr. President, March 4th and May 20th minutes have not been completed yet, so we'll need to defer both of those if you want to
Okay.
ask for a motion.
Deferral on both of those?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. If I can, for the board members, so since they weren't produced yet, if we can get a deferral for the March 4th regular meeting minutes and the May 20th study session meeting minutes, to defer those.
Make a motion to defer the regular meeting minutes of March 4th, 2020, and the study session, May 20th, 2020, to defer both of those.
I got a motion to defer from Bob. Do I have a second?
This is Nancy. I second the motion.
Second by Nancy. Roll call, please.
Mr. Burleson?
Yes.
Ms. Cardona?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Ms. Little?
Yes.
Ms. Woodland?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes. Motion to defer approved. Then for the Plan Commission study
So sorry.
That is a motion. No, Plan Commission study session for February 19, 2020. Can I get a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve February 19th, 2020 study session minutes.
I got a motion by Bob to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by John. Any discussion? If not, Margaret, roll call.
Mr. Burleson,
Yes.
Ms. Cardona,
Yes.
Mr. Gill,
Yes.
Mr. Gillette,
Yes.
Ms. Little,
Yes.
Ms. Woodland,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion approved for the Plan Commission study session, February 19, 2020. Next on the agenda is item number 5. We'll start with public hearings, and from my understanding, items due to pending litigation, items A, B, C, D, and E, between the parties, to defer to our next meeting. If Tim, do you have any comments?
Just for clarification on the record, Tim Kuiper here on behalf of LBL Development. Mr. President, that is correct. Pursuant to agreement of the parties, this matter is to be continued until such time as there's a court order, so this would be properly deferred until your July regular,
July 1st. Okay.
July 1st public meeting.
I would, yes, I was going to make, so for the board members, a mutual agreement between parties to defer the public hearing on items A through E on our agenda. When we make the motion to defer, could you please comment that it will be deferred to our next meeting date, which I believe is Wednesday, July 1st? Comments and concern from the board regarding a motion to defer?
You ready for a motion yet?
Yeah, I'll accept a motion, yeah.
I move that we defer items A through E on our agenda to the July 1st Plan Commission meeting based on pending litigation.
I have a motion to defer items A through E. Do I have a second?
This is
Second.
Nancy. I sent to defer items A through E to our July 1st
I have
meeting.
I have a second by Nancy. Questions or comments from the board? If not, Margaret, roll call?
Mr. Burleson,
Yes.
Ms. Cardona,
Yes.
Mr. Gill,
Yes.
Mr. Gillette,
Yes.
Ms. Little,
Yes, sorry.
Ms. Woodland,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes. Motion approved to defer items A through E. Next on the agenda will be item F. This is the Gates of St. John. They are seeking primary plat approval for a replat of R2 PUD Single Family Development Planning Unit 22, lots 2249 through 2258. Rick, before I turn it over to Tim, is all the documentation in order for the public hearing?
All items are in order, Mr. President, for this public hearing to proceed.
Very good. Tim, with that, I'll turn it over to you. And Tim, just for the pleasure of the general public here and online, can you please go through, again, the replatting, what is currently approved and what you're looking to have replatted? I know you've been doing this since
Nope,
February,
fine.
so if you could just go through that process for us one more time.
So this item was Tim Kuiper here on behalf of LBL Development LLC. This matter was originally put before the board in early January. It was set for a public hearing on March 4th. At that time, all the advertisements, notices, and publications were in order for the public hearing. It was continued at that time, and then due to COVID was then continued and continued. So we are here tonight for the public hearing on this item. What this does is it replats a portion of Unit 22 in the gates of St. John, east of Klein. Again, approximately for the general public and those online, that's so that's east of Klein, but that's generally in between 231 and 101st. This parcel extends more or less from Pod 4 of the gates on the west side and would continue on the east side. That would be the intersection for the entrance into this subdivision. Last year, this was submitted to the town, but was redone in November, I believe it was, and was approved with longer lots to make sure that it complied with the then in-town property. Since then, January 1st, there was additional annexations that were effective, allowing us to replat this area to then meet the average lot size of 11,200 square feet. So tonight what you have before you is a replat of those longer lots, consistent with the original development intent of that area. Again, the entrance would be off of Klein, where the current entrance is to the west that goes into what the McFarland home area is over there. There's been a traffic study. This was incorporated into that. Otherwise, it complies with the subdivision ordinance, the zoning ordinance, and the zoning commitment for the zoning that was done on this last year. Apart from that, I don't know if there's anything else. I'm happy to answer anything else, but I think that covers the highlights.
Okay. I will bring it back to the board. Board, any comments or questions for Tim? Just for record, we received a letter from Ken Krause from Hassan Associates regarding the replat of lot 22249. And it says, "Dear Mr. Kennedy, we have reviewed the primary plat for the reference project and have the following comments. 1, this project includes 61 R2 PUD lots, associated infrastructure and facilities. The subject is located east of Klein Avenue and north of 105th Avenue. 2, we have reviewed the plans dated September 18th, 2019, and revised December 30th, 2019. We find them to be satisfactory. 3, the development fee has not been established at this time. It will be calculated at 2% of the construction cost when the cost is available. And item number 4, the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, or SWIP, has not been reviewed at this time. The fee for that this review will be determined at the time of review." That was from Ken Krause, the town engineer. If there's no questions from the board, I will open it up to the public comment or for public hearing. With that, do we have a sheet, sign-in sheet?
No, we did not pass around a sign-in sheet,
Okay.
Mr. President.
Rick, did you receive any or any comments regarding?
I did. I received a written list of 4 questions, actually, posed by Mr. Dennis DeVito. If you want, I can hand them to you, and you can read them.
Okay.
And some of them, I believe, Adam will need to comment on. Those 4.
Okay. Before I go to these, if anyone from the general public would like to speak first, I will have you come up to the podium now. Please state your name and address so Margaret, our recorder, could record your comments. Public hearing is open. If anyone from the public would like to speak. I will ask again if anyone from the public would like to speak. One more time, if anyone here at the general public would like to speak. With that, until I read this letter, I will keep the public hearing open. It says, this is letter dated 6/3/2020 from Dennis DeVito at 10341 Silver Maple Drive. To the St. John Plan Commission, as a compromised senior and target for COVID-19, I'm not able to attend tonight's meeting. I do ask that you answer the posed questions tonight at tonight's Plan Commission. As you review agenda item Gates East Unit 22, I ask that you address the issue raised during the Plan Commission study session pertaining to the new definition of pipeline easement measures and restriction. Understanding that the proposed change will not directly affect the plat in question tonight because tonight's action will be based on current ordinances, Yet, an overview of some of the preliminary plats for much of the Gates East proposal will include both pipeline and extremely high voltage electrical transmission line. A question comes to mind of what easement ordinance might be in effect once these upcoming plats come before the commission. I do not feel it's too early to ask a question about the potential plat submission already discussed with the town, even if it has not formally subject to review. If, for instance, the proposed pipeline easement ordinance changes are approved by the town council, meaning becoming effective immediately, it may restrict the plats on the north end and west side of the plats that have still been proposed. Based on the above, I ask the following questions. So what I'll do, I'll ask them, and then if there's any, Adam, Rick, whomever, that answer them at the time. At last Plan Commission recommendation, changes to the subdivision control ordinance were discussed on the agenda for tonight. If any changes are submitted to and eventually approved by the town council, when do they become effective, immediately or after a period of time? If not immediately, when do such changes become effective?
Can we take these one at a time, Mr. Kennedy?
I'm asked, yes.
Okay, all right.
So question one is, in our subdivision ordinance that we're have on the agenda today, it talks about a pipeline impact or transmission impact area, which creates a 50-foot buffer from the easement of that pipeline. If depending on the board's decision, it would go to the town council at the end of the month, and when would those ordinance then, or control ordinance, take effect?
So, Adam, this is the part that I'm admittedly a little fuzzy on. Now, if the council adopts this ordinance, if you recommend the subdivision control ordinance to the council tonight, and they act on it at their, I believe it's their June 24th meeting, there is a fine structure, Adam, in the ordinance. And if memory serves, I believe that when there's a fine as part of an ordinance, there's a period of time that it has to wait before it becomes, it has to be published before it becomes adopted. Am I remembering that right, or?
No, you are. And the fine structure's been revised or amended pursuant to the proposal submitted, or being considered tonight.
Right. There's a fine in this ordinance. If violations of this ordinance are finable in an amount up to $2,500 a day every day that there is an infraction or a violation of the ordinance. So I believe that because there's a fine in the ordinance, it has to be published in a newspaper after adoption by the council. But I don't recall whether that's 10 days, Adam. I'm sorry, I don't recall that period of time.
I question, Ray, so since the request for plat approval, this John Kennedy, plat approval for these PUDs has occurred prior to potential changes to our subdivision control ordinance, would these developments, items A, be grandfathered in under the previous ordinance already, though?
I believe that's going to depend on the outcome of the lawsuit.
Well, and I don't want to speculate, but there is a provision in law, Section 1109, it's referred to as the secondary additional related permits or approvals. And it's a provision of law that essentially establishes that if an applicant has timely filed an application for primary plat approval, and the Plan Commission, or the Town Council in this case, takes action to change the standards set forth in the subdivision control ordinance, the application is essentially governed for at least 3 years after the person applies for the permit by the statutes, ordinances, development standards in effect and applicable when the application was filed. So it requires necessarily some determination of when the application was filed, and then when any of the standards may have been changed. And so without at the risk of getting into speculation or commenting on information that's not readily available to me about some of those dates, it's very difficult to answer that question directly. But to try to do that, Mr. President, the ordinance would become effective, I submit immediately, subject to what Rick's comments were about those provisions of the fines or penalties that may have been increased with the adoption of the new ordinance, which does require publication. It does require that the ordinance be published before those become effective.
Okay. So it wouldn't happen tonight, it would still go before the town council, and then there would be some sort of grace period between town council and publication of the fines.
Mr. President, yeah, nothing becomes effective tonight. You're simply going to make a recommendation to the town council.
Great, okay. That was question number 1. Question number 2, while not on tonight's agenda, it is clear from preliminary plat submission for this area that future plats will contain a pipeline in the north and west side. I request that the Plan Commission specifically state for the record if any revised ordinance, which might be approved at the town council meeting later this month, would be in effect when this or any other plat comes in front of the Plan Commission. If ordinance changes takes effect immediately, which we found out it will not, tonight may well be the last opportunity to plat using existing ordinance. So again, this comes down, it sounds like our subdivision control ordinance change and how this affects items that we have deferred because of pending litigation. So it's,
And if I could, very simply, if a new plat has to be filed, it's subject to the current regulations. Without getting into everything else, that's just an easy way to
okay.
boil it down.
Adam, any comment? Okay. Item number 3, I do not recall any high voltage line easement ordinance were changed. Does this mean that for any lot bordering an electric line easement can measure town required setback directly from the easement lines?
Our ordinance addressed underground high-pressure gas pipelines, but it did not include electrical transmission lines overhead like exist in what would be Todd's 27 and 28, the platting of 27 and 28. So
Okay.
it did not include that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President, if I may, Rick, I believe we did address it, but the lots cannot include any part of a high voltage transmission line. So I think we did put that in there, but it wouldn't affect this anyhow. So we basically said you can't plat part of a lot into that easement and count it as part of the square foot, the minimum square foot.
I don't recall including electrical.
I thought you included any major, anyway, it's, yeah.
That applies to the size of a lot, Paul, yes.
Right.
The size of, the minimum size lot has
Correct.
to be outside of that, yes.
Correct, that, yeah, but there's no,
Yeah.
but it's different than the pipeline impact zone
Yes,
entirely, yeah.
correct, yeah. Mhm.
And the final questions, tonight review of Unit 22 and Gates East is limited to lots 2249 to 2258. No other lots or infrastructure changes are being requested in Section 22.
Correct.
Yeah, we're just looking to replat those lots. That's all his questions. Again, I will bring it back to the public before I close public hearing. I will ask one more time, anybody from the public have any comments on this? At this time, I will close public hearings for item number E. I'm sorry, F, thank you. I will bring it back to the board for item number F. To the board, is there any questions for the petitioner regarding the replat in Unit 22, lots 2249 through 2258? Hearing no questions from the board. Again, this is a recommendation to the town council.
No, not on primary plat.
I'm sorry,
This is
that's
your
right.
decision.
I'm probably, you're right. This is approval, or to the board's pleasure, I will ask for a motion regarding replating of Plan Unit 22, lots 2249 through 2258.
And Mr. President, it should be conditioned upon satisfying Mr. Krause's conditions.
Finding the facts, yes. Thank you, Tim. Referencing the finding of facts, please. Discussion from the board regarding petitioner's request. Anyone would like to make a motion regarding this? Adam, I've never run into a situation, no motion has been made. What is the,
Well, Mr. President, I would remind the members that pursuant to Indiana Code 3674707, which reads, if after the hearing, the Plan Commission determines that the application and plat comply with the standards in the subdivision control ordinance, the commission shall make written findings and a decision granting primary approval to the plat.
and I've learned the difference between should and shall. Should is when I ask my kids to clean the room and they decide if they should or shouldn't.
I would
Shall means it is an obligation.
submit to the members that if they have reached the determination that the application complies with the subdivision control ordinance, the concrete standards in the ordinance, then I submit that the commission shall make written findings to that effect, and a decision approving the primary approval of plat.
Rick, Rick, do you believe this has met those subdivision control ordinances?
Subdivision control ordinance regulations, as well as the zoning commitment that accompanied this development proposal, yes,
Okay.
Mr. President.
I will bring it back to the board. You have heard the advice of our attorney and our town planner regarding that this replat has met our ordinance. It is a situation where we shall approve this. So again, I will bring it back to the board for a motion.
Make a motion to, for a primary plat approval for the Gates of St. John East, Unit 22, lots 2249 through 2258, and Ken Krause's findings of fact, his letter dated March 3rd, 2020.
And that's to approve, or?
Yes, to
Okay.
approve.
I have approval to replat with the finding of facts of Ken Krause's letter. Do I have a second?
I'll second Bob's motion.
I have a second by John Gill. Any discussion or comment by the board? I know, board, this might have been a very hard decision. I agree with the decision that has been made tonight because we are following the law. And I appreciate those individuals that made the motion. I know it's not easy. So with that, Margaret, roll call.
Mr. Burleson?
Yes.
Sorry, I misplaced my sheet. Ms. Cardona?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Donna Little?
Yes.
Ms. Woodland?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes, motion is approved. Next on the agenda, public hearing, Moonraker Estates, Michelle Caudry, or Doug, are you representing? Petitioner is seeking primary and secondary plat approval for a one-lot subdivision in Castle Rock Estates. She is seeking to combine two existing lots into one. Just for the board, it has been practice for us when we take a residential lot and we make it from 1 to 2, we do both primary and secondary. So there would be two motions. There would be a primary motion for primary, and then we'll do a motion for secondary plat approval. With that, I will turn it over to petitioner Doug. Oh, Rick, everything in order for the public hearing?
Yes, they are, Mr. Chairman.
Everything's in order. I will turn over to the petitioner. Doug?
Good evening, Doug Reddig with DVG. Michelle is my client. She really could not attend due to COVID reasons. She feels she's high risk and asked me to represent her. I do have her on my cell phone if we do need to contact her. And I believe she's watching if this is live streamed. I think that was her plan. So, but this one's straightforward enough. We're combining two lots in Castle Rock, lots 11 and 12 on 87th Place. We're combining them into one lot. These are large lots. This is a 2-acre lot that we're putting together here. Each of the original lots was close to an acre. So because it's in Castle Rock, everything's in the ground. Infrastructure is done, sewer taps, buffalo boxes, drainage is all accounted for. It's simply a formality to combine the two lots. As was stated, we are going to ask for primary and secondary due to the simplicity of the project. I will be glad to answer any questions. I think you have a letter from Ken Kraus. I imagine you want to read that, and then we can continue.
Any questions from the board for Doug?
No.
Not hearing any questions from the board. I have a letter here from Ken Kraus, the town attorney, regarding Moonraker Estates. Dear Mr. Kennedy.
Engineer.
I'm sorry, did someone jump in?
Yeah, that's town engineer, not attorney.
I'm sorry, town engineer.
Come on.
Hey, I'm giving you a new title, Ken.
Yeah.
Town engineer, thank you for that. Dear Mr. Kennedy, we have reviewed the plat for the reference project and have the following comments. 1, this subdivision project combines lots 11 and 12 in Castle Rock Phase 1 into one lot. 2, we have reviewed the plat and find it to be satisfactory. 3, the development fee for this project is $900, as there are no associated public infrastructure improvements and is to be paid prior to the plan commission president and secretary signing the secondary plat. All the public improvements have been installed as part of the existing subdivision. With that, finding of facts from Ken, our town engineer, I will open the public hearing to the public. Anyone from the public would like to speak?
Mr. President, I did not receive any remonstrances of any kind in my office relative to this matter.
Thank you, Rick. Again, anyone? Going once, twice? Anyone from the public would like to speak? Hearing no one from the public, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the board. Board, any final questions or comments before I will entertain a motion? Please, we will make the motion for, oh my God, where's my notes? Primary plat approval first. Please reference the finding of facts from Ken Kraus's letter.
I make a motion that we grant primary plat approval to Moonraker Estates based on the findings of fact of town engineer Ken Kraus.
I have a motion from John. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Questions from the board, comments? If not, Margaret, roll call.
Mr. Burleson?
Yes.
Ms. Cardona?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Ms. Little,
Yes.
Ms. Wooland,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes, motion approved for primary plat. At this time, I will ask the board for their, to entertain a approval for a secondary plat, again referencing finding of facts. Ken Krause's letter, please.
Make a motion for secondary plat approval for Moonraker Estates and the finding of facts of Ken Krause's letter dated April 28th, 2020.
Perfect. I got a motion from Bob. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second that. This is Yolanda.
Yolanda's got the second. Thank you, Yolanda. Any questions or comments for the board? If not, roll call, Margaret.
Mr. Burleson,
Yes.
Ms. Cardona,
Yes.
Mr. Gill,
Yes.
Mr. Gillette,
Yes.
Ms. Little,
Yes.
Ms. Wooland,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes, motion approved.
Thank you very much. Couple quick questions. Rick, the fee was paid, I believe?
Yes.
All right. And then, can I produce the Mylars immediately, or we still gotta wait 30 days?
30 days. The
I
Mylar,
thought.
the secondary plat can't be signed until 30 days after today's date. Yes.
So I'll get it to you soon, Rick. It's ready to go, so. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is item H. I've been advised that the petitioner asked to be deferred. If I can get a motion from the board to defer item H. Did he give a date, or should I just assume
Just to the
July
next
1st?
meeting. Yeah, to the next.
So if I can get a motion to defer item H to July 1st,
Make a motion for AC Holding Group for item H to defer to July 1st.
I have a motion, oh, I'm sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
got a motion to defer to July 1st. Do I have a second?
Mike Gillette, second.
I got a second. Any questions or comments from the board before Margaret takes roll call? Hit it, Margaret.
Mr. Burleson,
Yes.
Ms. Cardona,
Yes.
Mr. Gill,
Yes.
Mr. Gillette,
Yes.
Ms. Little,
Yes.
Ms. Wooland,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes, motion to defer to July 1st has been approved. Next on the agenda, subdivision control ordinance, public hearing on the amendments of the subdivision control ordinance. Everything in place, Rick?
Yes, everything's ready for this, to proceed for public hearing, Mr. President.
All right, everything's in place. Rick, do I turn over for you for any, just a quick review for the general public, and then I will open it up to public hearing?
Yeah, I think that I'll just let people ask questions if they have any. You each have a copy of a list of changes that we went through extensively at the study session a couple of weeks ago. I'm not going to go through those again. Adam has conducted his review and had a couple of things to add to the, some changes, and has prepared, by the way, the form of ordinance adopting this. So it's ready to go. There's one thing that Ken Krause is going to produce for us is a CAD drawing of two of the sheets, because they're a little bit fuzzy in the original document. So he's going to provide the CAD drawings of those two items in time for the council's meeting on the 24th, but he just didn't have time to get it done for tonight. A big thank you to Jason. I know he's listening. He's not here right now, but he helped to reduce this to a manageable size now. It is now down from 195 pages to roughly 80 pages because of improvements Jason made to the formatting of the document. There were a lot of blank pages, as you may have seen in the original document, intentionally blank pages in the original document. So it's a more concise document now and has all the changes in it that we all discussed 2 weeks ago. So it's, as far as I'm concerned, unless there are questions from the audience or any further questions from the Plan Commission members, it's ready for a recommendation to our town council.
Rick, one question, since Mr. DeVito's questions was all about timing. Are all of these affected by the fee publication, or will some of these go into effect if approved by the town council?
This whole document
The whole
Will
documents?
not become effective until it's published.
Okay,
I would concur.
all right.
I would agree with Mr. Eberley.
With that, just for the general public and those listening, this plan commission at the last study session spent 2+
2+ hours.
2+ hours. We went through every single bullet point on these 3 pages. So just so that everyone's aware, we did take the time. We had it prior. We had 2 sets of changes. The plan commission had it prior to our meetings, and we still sat here over 2.5 hours to review each of the items on the proposed changes. So with that, I will open it to the general public. If anybody would like to speak on the subdivision control ordinance changes. I will ask again. I will ask a third time. Anyone from the general public would like to comment? Seeing no one coming to the podium, I will close public comment. With that, I will bring it back to the board. This, if any questions or comments from the board. Hearing no questions or comments from the board, this is a recommendation for approval to the town council, or denial, or not approval, or non-recommendation, whatever. So at this time, I will entertain a motion from the board regarding the changes to the subdivision control ordinance. And would they reference the changes to the, or they don't need to even reference that, just, okay. Just a recommendation from the board.
I make a motion that we give a favorable recommendation to the town council to accept the amendments to the subdivision control ordinance.
I have a favorable recommendation motion from John. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Bob. Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, roll call, Margaret.
Mr. Burleson?
Yes.
Ms. Cardona?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Ms. Little?
Yes.
Ms. Woodland?
Oh, I'm sorry, I had it muted, yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes. Favorable recommendation motion to the town council has been approved. Just I want to thank the board members for their time and effort to review all these items, and the 2.5 hours that we commented last week. You guys put time and effort into it, and I truly appreciate it, and I believe the town of St. John will appreciate your time and effort you put into it, so thank you very much. Next on the agenda, item number 6. I've been advised that they have asked for this item to be deferred at this time. If I can get a motion to defer to July 1st from the board. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion for item 6J to defer to July 1st.
I have a motion to defer. Do I have a second? And that was from Bob.
And Mike Gillette, I'll second it.
I got a second from Mike. Any questions or comments from the board? Margaret, roll call.
Mr. Burleson?
Yes.
Ms. Cardona?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Ms. Little?
Yes.
Ms. Woodland?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes. Motion to defer was approved. Next on the agenda, item K, Greystone Unit 2. They are seeking a secondary plat approval of this final phase. Do I have the petitioner name, please? And
I am Michael Tiller with Schilling Development, representing Greystone. I'm here tonight requesting final plat approval for Greystone Unit 2, Block 5. This does complete the last block of Greystone Unit 2. Infrastructure is in. I believe we did drop off the letter of credit, which is for final surface. Other than that, it's ready to go.
any questions from the board to the petitioner? Hearing none, I have a letter from Ken. Dear Mr. Kennedy, we have reviewed the secondary plat for the reference project and have the following comments. 1, this subdivision project is for 28 residential lots, 45 units, and associated facilities on 10.204 acres. 2, we have reviewed the plat and find it to be satisfactory. 3, the development fee for this is $10,482.72. 4, the public improvements are not complete. A letter of credit should be submitted to the town in the amount of $28,195.20 to ensure the improvements will be installed. And you said you turned that in.
That was dropped off 2 weeks ago.
Okay. And then it says, or if a surety bond or other method of ensuring the completion of the work is submitted, it should be the amount of $33,321.60. With that, I will bring it back to the board for a motion for secondary plat approval. Please reference the finding of facts, please.
I recommend a favorable recommendation for Greystone Unit 2, Block 5, and the findings of facts of Mr. Krause's letter dated April 28th, 2020.
We have approval for the secondary plat from Bob. Do I have a second?
This is Nancy, I second.
We have a second. Questions or comments for the board? If not, roll call.
Mr. Burleson?
Yes?
Ms. Cardona?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Ms. Little?
Yes.
Ms. Woodland?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes. Motion for secondary plat was approved.
Thanks, Mike.
Rick, do we make a motion for the town to
accept the bond, the
to
letter of
accept the
credit.
bond.
Yeah, the letter of credit, yes.
Just want to make sure. So if I can also get a motion to approve or recommend the town accept the letter of credit, which is in the amount of $28,195.20. If I can get a motion for the, a recommendation for the town to accept that.
This is Nancy. I make a motion for the town to, I recommend the town to accept the letter of credit for $28,195.20.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second?
I have a second from Bob. Questions or comments from the board? Margaret, roll call, please.
Mr. Burleson?
Yes?
Ms. Cardona?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Ms. Little?
Yes.
Ms. Woodland?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes. Motion was approved.
Mr. President, if I could ask Ms. Little if she can confirm for us whether she will be, or when she will be able to sign the plat. Mr. Kennedy will be able to sign it tonight, Michael, but Ms. Little was not able to attend tonight. Donna, do you think you'll be able to sign that plat?
I will have someone from my office bring it to me tomorrow to sign them, if that's okay. I already talked to Beth about it.
Okay. And you think returned on
They'll
Friday?
take a return trip, like.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, Summerlin Estates, Altoff Home petitioner is seeking a reduction of its letter of credit. Petitioner, state your name, please.
Good evening, Ed Rechtenwall with Altoff Homes, representing Summerlin Estates. We are here seeking a reduction in our letter of credit, the balance of which would be final surface and common walks. I'd be happy to answer any questions there is in regards to this matter.
Mr. President, they have submitted that the new letter of credit, or was it a bond, Ed?
Bond.
It's a bond. They have submitted that today, if you take action to allow the reduction.
All right.
Ultimately, now, remember, ultimately, the council has to act on this. So this is a recommendation to the council.
Any questions or comments from the board to the petitioner? Hearing none, I will read a letter from Ken Kraus, the town engineer. Dear Mr. Kennedy, we have reviewed the bond reduction request for this project. Public Works has reported that all sewers, water mains, and streets have been constructed. There is surface asphalt paving, common concrete sidewalks, and soil erosion control measures work left to be completed. The current bond is in the amount of $596,046.62 and may be released and replaced with a new bond in the amount of $61,629.75. So we have a recommendation from Ken, bringing to the board to entertain a motion for a reduction in bond, letter of credit, reduction.
Make a favorable motion for Summerlin Estates Phase 1 for a new bond of amount of $61,629.75.
I have a motion for favorable recommendation. Do I have a second?
I second. Donna Little.
Donna, thank you. We have a second. Any questions or comments from the board? Roll call, Margaret?
Oops, sorry, I didn't click hard enough. Mr. Burleson,
Yes.
Ms. Cardona,
Yes.
Mr. Gill,
Yes.
Mr. Gillette,
Yes.
Ms. Little,
Yes.
Ms. Woodland,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes. Motion for recommendation, a favorable recommendation was approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Walden Clearing, Unit 2, Altoff Homes. Petitioner is seeking secondary plat approval of 12 lots in Unit 2. This would complete the platting on the north side of 93rd Avenue. Petitioner?
And Ed Rectamall with Old Top Homes here representing the project. The secondary plat is actually for an approval of 18 lots, not 12 lots, but this would complete the north side of 93rd.
Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any questions in regards to it.
Questions, comments from the board?
We also have the bond for that, Mr. President.
For the secondary?
For
Okay.
secondary, yes.
All right, hearing no questions or comments from the board, I will read a letter from Ken. It says, Dear Mr. Kennedy, we have reviewed the secondary plat for the reference project and have the following comments. 1, this subdivision project is for 18 R2 residential lots and associate facilities on 10.808 acres. 2, we have reviewed the plat and find it to be satisfactory. 3, the development fee for this is $8,223.74. The public improvements are not complete. A letter of credit should be submitted to the town in the amount of $299,358.12 to ensure the improvements will be installed, or if a surety bond or other method of ensuring completion of this work is submitted, it should be in the amount of $353,786.88. With that, I will entertain a motion for recommendation, approval for secondary plat, and then we will then make a motion for town council to accept the letter of credit. So first, secondary plat, please.
I move that we accept the secondary plat of Walden Clearing Phase 2 to complete everything north of 93rd.
Reference finding of facts.
Oh, and I reference the finding of the fact by Ken Kraus.
Thank you. Motion to approve by John Gill. Do I have a second?
Mike Gillette, I'll second it.
We got a second. We'll give it to Mike.
Yep.
We got it to Mike for second. Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Burleson,
Yes.
Ms. Cardona,
Yes.
Mr. Gill,
Yes.
Mr. Gillette,
Yes.
Ms. Little,
Yes.
Ms. Woodland,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes. Motion approved. At this time, can I get a recommendation of motion to act on a recommendation to the town council to accept a bond in the amount of $299,358.12. They're putting in a bond, right?
No.
Letter of credit?
They're doing a bond, which is
Bond.
the higher amount, 350.
Oh, I'm sorry. To the board, I apologize. They're doing the bond in the amount of $353,786.88. If I can get a motion?
Make a motion for a bond for Walden Clearing Phase 2. Favorable recommendation to the town council in the amount of $353,786.88.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
This is Mike Gillette. I'll second it.
Second by Mike. Questions or comments? Discussion, Margaret, roll call, please.
Mr. Burleson?
Yes.
Ms. Cardona?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Ms. Little?
Yes.
Ms. Woodland?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes, motion approved. Favorable recommendation. Thank you very
Commissioner
much.
members.
Next on the agenda, number N, Three Springs Unit 3, petitioner is seeking a 6-month extension of preliminary plat for unit of Three Springs. The request was in early March, but due to the Plan Commission canceling meetings, it is brought here before us tonight. With that, I will turn it over to Doug Reddick.
Good evening, Doug Reddick with DVG, representing the petitioner, Dave Barrick, who is also here in the audience tonight. Just like you said, the approval was granted in March of 2019. Late February, early March, we realized we were coming up on the 1-year period. I reached out to Rick to ask for the extension, and here we are tonight. Mr. Barrick has got his, and he could speak for himself, but he had some delays with financing and what have you, but he does want to start at least block 1 of this project very soon. Dave, is that fair to say? We understand that this extension is only good for 6 months, and Rick, you said it goes back to March. So we're 3 months away from the deadline of this extension that we're asking for. I think I just wanted to put that out there for clarification. So that's why we're here tonight, requesting that extension.
Questions or comments from the board? Rick, should I read?
Yes.
Just for the board member, this letter is dated February 27, 2019. It is addressed to, at that time, President of the Plan Commission, Mr. Forbes. It says, "Dear Mr. Forbes, we have reviewed the primary plat for the reference project and have the following comments. 1, the subdivision project includes 42 residential lots, 3 outlots, streets, and associated facilities and utilities to be built on 34.291 acres. 2, we have completed our review and find the certified plans to be satisfactory. 3, the development fee has not been established at this time. It will be based on 2% of the construction cost of the public improvements as supplied by the developer or a certified estimate by the developer's engineer. 4, stormwater pollution prevention plan is included in the project plans but has not been reviewed at this time. The fee for this review will be determined." Sorry. The fee for that review will be determined at time of review. Sorry about that, Margaret. Do you need me to read that again? Apologize to the public. I did not have my microphone on. Margaret, do you?
I heard you fine.
All right.
I heard you just fine, sir.
Thank you. Apologize for that, Margaret. From anyone from the general public, if you did not hear me, I will reread that letter. I apologize. I did not have my mic on. All right. With that, I will bring it back to the board to entertain a motion regarding the petitioner's request for 6-month extension.
Before we entertain a motion, I was always concerned about this subdivision with the pipeline, with the resident homes being so close to the pipeline. The back door is the pipeline. It'd be a disaster if something happened there, if pipe rupture, the houses would be gone. It'd be incinerated with that kind of pressure out there. We just passed a control ordinance, you know, moving that, having a impact zone area. And I'm not fuzzy about this subdivision. I never have been, and I don't think I will.
Comments, questions, board? Bob, I was on this plan commission at the same time, and I was not as well. However, it was approved. They did meet our existing standards. And I know this was a very contentious development, but they followed our standards at the time. And we, in my 5 years on this board, to date, I have not recalled a extension that we have turned down. And it's in our ordinance that we have to try to be uniformed with our ordinances. So I understand, Bob, I totally understand. I know the changes we are making, but we have to try to be fair and not changing the rules in the middle of the game.
No, and I understand that.
So,
But we do represent residents, future residents, and that's our job, is to protect the betterment of the residents of St. John.
I agree with you 100%. But at the same...
John, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, Yolanda, go ahead.
I just want to mention something as well. I agree with Bob. As many of you probably are aware, I'm one of the people that actually protested this subdivision, the phase 3 of the subdivision. I echo what Bob just said. I think that we are given this task of representing the interests of the residents of St. John for a reason. And I think for us to move forward with this, despite the fact that they meet the standards, it's just completely contradictory to what we're doing moving forward. The development is completely inconsistent with the new subdivision standards that we just approved. So I do not feel comfortable with this. I never will, and it's just not something that I think we should be moving forward with. But I know that they met the standards, and I know that, this is something that has been approved. But I think that as a board, maybe we should discuss this in more detail to see what we can do to make this consistent with the direction that the town is moving in, because as it sits here today, it's just not.
This is Nancy. I have to agree with Yolanda and Bob. I get it. I understand that, previous commissions, approved some of this, but we've worked on the ordinance and changed some things, and I get it. I get that part. But again, I agree with Yolanda. We owe some sort of responsibility to the residents. And just because it was approved or, maybe it was missed, I don't know what the case was. But if something happened to our residents and we just push this through, I don't think any of us, I know I couldn't live with myself. So I have to agree with Yolanda and Bob.
Any other comments from the board? At this time, I will entertain a motion if there's a board member wants to make a motion. There are three options. You could approve, deny, defer.
This is Nancy. Can I ask a question?
Nancy, absolutely.
Okay, so if we defer, can we get some maybe other legal counsel, or what help can we get on making a resolution that we might be better with if we defer? I mean, what does that get us?
I heard your question, Nancy. We would take it to study session.
Really valid point, because technically speaking, the way that this
Go ahead, Yolanda.
played out, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rick.
No, you
No,
broke off.
you broke off, Yolanda. Continue, please.
Just going to say that it seems like because they point, I think, and what she's getting at is maybe seeking some counsel to see what we can do. Most of us have. Is there something we?
Yolanda, I guess you're breaking it out. I guess, because here's the question. Well, I mean, here's the situation. We have just made a recommendation to the town council to accept our subdivision ordinance control. That goes to the town council, and some period of time after that, these new subdivision ordinance control take place. And here's my dilemma. So that's what happened. All of a sudden now, we have a developer who had met at the time. I know we are moving the changes, and I am all in favor of public safety as well. But now, if this petitioner is not approved tonight, or in a month, then he would be under the new ordinance that potentially, if the town council approves. So he now has to follow the new ordinance, I would imagine, unless he gets another petition in prior to that happening. I don't know if that's where you're going, Yolanda. I apologize.
We made 13 revisions to stuff.
If I may say a couple things.
Absolutely.
Most of you, well, some of you were here a year ago when it was approved, a little bit over a year ago. And if you recall, after we got our approval, we came back and we presented a revision to the plan, eliminating the safety hazard. That did entail a rezoning, which you guys did not approve. So we presented a plan that we thought would be a good compromise. That was turned down as well. That leaves us in a tough spot. The intention for this year is to build Block 1, north of the pipelines. If we can get an extension on that, Dave, are you willing to maybe revisit the south end again? In order for the south end to work with a major revision to remove the easements from the lots, there's not enough lots there to make this work. So if we could rezone a very small portion to R3, we're still willing to do that. It would be later, it would be next year. We wouldn't even build the south part this year. We would come back, do what we did last year, ask for a rezone, redesign, remove all the easements from the lots, meet your ordinance. What we need is a courtesy from the Plan Commission to continue the project. We need to start phase 1. The property north of the pipeline has very little impact to the pipelines. We have a couple of side yards that would be impacted.
So everything north of the pipeline would stay as is?
Correct.
That's the initial plat. And you would only be looking at an extension for the north half?
We could live with that. And our word is we will come back. We will ask for this rezone, exactly what we asked for before. I have sketches with me tonight. If anybody wants to see that sketch, I brought them, I'm prepared to show them to you.
What's it zoned at now, Rick?
It's a combination of R1 and R2 and R3.
We have all three.
There are 6 or 7 R3 lots.
6.
6?
So we have 3 zones now, and we still lose lots by moving the street, but if we could just put more duplexes on the very south side of the project, we could eliminate all the easements. And really, it was what we wanted to do last year. We thought we were on the right track. I don't really exactly know why that didn't go through, but here we are. We're in a tough spot. The intention is to build the north half this year. We can come back, if you give us the extension on the north, I'm gonna say the north half, but let's say north of the pipeline, north of outlot A, B, and C, there's 3 outlots there. We won't even plat outlots A, B, and C or anything to the south with our final plat for phase 1. We'll come back and try that rezone again.
And you'd want it to look like that?
That's correct.
North,
And the hatched-in area is what we have to rezone. So it's a small portion that would get rezoned. We have 6 duplex lots now up against the railroad tracks.
Right here.
We continue them along the south side, and there's really no easements at all. No, the safety concerns are mitigated. The other difference is, the current plan has a stub going to the east, that Fremont Street. This one has a stub to the south, and I think that also has a benefit, because the property to the east is gonna have problems with these easements as well, and stubbing the street to the east just kind of exacerbates that. So the new plan stubs the street to the south. It's Schilling-owned property. They're gonna develop that someday. We like this plan better, we always have, but we understand it's a rezone. It's a few more duplex lots. To us, a few more duplex lots is no big deal when we're looking at public safety. And we really are interested in that as well.
so you would move the street just south of the easement? Is that how I'm looking at it right now?
The street actually gets moved to the north.
North, yeah.
Closer to the easements.
Well, yeah, I'm just.
So
yeah,
we'll have
south.
a huge green belt in between block 1 and block 2. And I want to say those green belts equivalent to a couple of football fields. It's pipelines, we get it. It's a huge
688
green belt, which would be.
That's how wide it is?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Doug.
East to west, it's 688 feet.
How about north to south? I can't see it.
390, does that say? Oh, let me just.
It's probably 200 feet. Darn near. I can get the drawing, but.
50, 20.
So I'm not trying to complicate things. I just want to be honest with y'all.
Rick, could the members that are on electronically, can they see this?
About 175.
Yes. I mean, they should be able to.
Okay, I just want to, I don't want
Yeah,
to
this
put
is
any.
Ken. I can see it just fine.
Okay, I just don't want to put anyone in position of, let's say, voting blind. I just don't, I want to make sure everyone sees this and understands what's being asked. It's
Well,
just
Mr.
being.
President, if I could make a comment on that, I understand what Mr. Reddick is saying. I don't believe you can grant a 6-month extension to just part of this plat. It's all or nothing. You either, and Adam, now, so we would have to, I don't know how you do this. I certainly trust Mr. Barrick. If he says he would change to this plan, he would change to this plan. Remember, though, you don't control that. The zoning is determined by your town council. So you could be in favor of going forward with this, and you might be inclined to say, this is great, we'd issue a favorable recommendation on the zoning, and the council could deny it. So that leaves Mr. Barrick back to where he was before. So you don't, again, number one, I don't think you can just grant an extension to half of this plat. Adam can follow up on that. And number two, you don't control the destiny in terms of the zoning. You can only make a recommendation. Adam?
Yeah, Mr. President, I agree with Mr. Eberley. The item on the agenda tonight is the extension of the primary plat approval. And I don't believe at this meeting, the Plan Commission can review it again and say, well, we'll give you, we'll extend it for this part of it, but we won't for this other part of it. I agree with Mr. Eberley. I think it is all or nothing. Either it's extended in its entirety or it's not. And if you extend it, even taking at full face value what's been presented to you from a legal standpoint, that's what's been accepted, and that's what the developer would be allowed to proceed to develop, as it's been presented in its entirety.
All right. I will bring it back to the board.
6 months from
to
today.
entertain a motion.
3 months.
Mr. President, could I ask Mr. Reddick just to one more time, just to reiterate what you're considering, that what your preference is to develop this as this plat shows, not as what has been approved?
We are absolutely willing to come back in. If we were granted the extension, Dave, you can say it again, we're only interested in building north of the pipeline this year. We will come back in this year with a redesign that looks just like that. You have my word, if Dave authorizes me to do that, we will do it. And I know you guys are in a tough spot, and I kind of had a feeling that this is where this was going to go, Rick. I wasn't sure if we could ask for extension on part of it, if that was even a possibility.
Do we have legal stance to do that? Didn't sound like we did.
We can only either grant or deny the request for the extension of the primary plat that includes lots impacted by the pipeline easements. That's all you can do. You can't say, we'll extend the primary plat approval on the north half of this property. You just can't do that. So,
But we could grant the whole thing with their word
yes, you could. And again.
of changing it to this. But then we don't have any, but the town council's got to approve the zoning down.
Because the plan commission did not approve this plat.
The first time.
We made an unfavorable recommendation, and it's still the town council.
Made an
overruled.
unfavorable recommendation on
Yeah.
on the rezoning
Rezone.
effort to rezone those lots shown there
Yeah.
to R3 duplex. That's true, and it got defeated, of course, by
By the town council.
That's right. We have a completely new town council now, so.
Yeah.
And I certainly take both Mr. Reddick and Mr. Barrick at their word, and I know they would pursue this, but none of us here can guarantee its outcome.
I have one quick question. It's a little, probably for the attorney. This extension, if it is granted, is it 6 months from today?
It should be from the expiration, original
Yeah,
expiration.
so,
Well,
Mr. Barrett, the provision of the town ordinance provides that primary plat approval shall be effective for a maximum period of 12 months unless upon application by subdivider in writing an extension of time is requested. The Plan Commission, finding reasonable grounds, therefore, can grant one or more extensions which shall not be for a longer period of time than 6 months, provided, however, secondary plat approval of any portion of the primary plat, which portion shall be predetermined at the public hearing on the primary plat approval, shall automatically extend the remainder of the primary plat for an additional 12 months. In my opinion, it would be 6 months from the time the 12 months expired.
Early March.
But you weren't conducting any business. You know, the town was essentially shut down. So this would have all been presented back in March, but you shut everything down. This is the first chance you've had to come in. In fairness to us, 6 months should start from now, moving forward.
Mr. President, is this the first request for the first 6-month extension?
Yes.
Yes.
So, again, it allows for one or more extensions.
Right.
So if my interpretation of the ordinance is correct, if the Plan Commission were to approve the extension and the developer is indicating it doesn't give us enough time, they can come
I'm
back
not
and
saying-
ask for another extension.
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying in view of this virus situation that we've had, which has impacted all of us, including us, I believe that, you know, we would have been back here in March, but now we're back here today.
Right.
So I
So you're
think
saying
those
6 months from now,
Should start from today.
today.
But I also, I hear what, Ms. Barrick, I hear what you're saying. But there's nothing that stops you in 3 months from now
Asking
to
for-
come back in and ask for another extension. And I'm sympathetic to your plight
I'm
because
not
of that.
asking for sympathy.
No, but
I'm
I know what you're saying now, but we're also saying, I don't think there's anything in our ordinance, and Adam, I'm not looking at it, that states that gives us any leeway based on,
Well, Mr. President, I have a suggestion. Actually, the language in the ordinance says that you can grant up to a 6-month extension. So you could grant a 3-month extension, a 4-month extension today if you wanted to, and put this on your agenda next month for a 6-month extension from that period. You can grant it for anything from 1 to 6 months now. So.
We can't go to 9 right now.
Huh?
We couldn't ask for 9 months tonight, is
Right,
what
you
you're
can't
saying.
ask for 9 months now, but they could ask for 3 months or 4 months, whatever gets them to July 1st, and they could then come in and ask for a 6-month extension from July 1st. That's one way to work with that, but you don't have the flexibility, in my opinion, to go beyond 6 months.
Or start it at a different date other than the
Well,
last day of 12
Starting
months.
at a different date is, I mean, it's not, it doesn't specifically say that it's from the date of expiration of the 12 months, but I certainly think that's implied. I don't know, where else would you start it from?
And let's have the discussion. Let's say we get the extension and we intend to build block 1, and we're under construction 45 days from now. What does this extension give us? Just the starting date?
The ability to start,
The
yes.
starting date. We don't have to be done
Right,
in 3 months from now. We have to be started.
right,
I wanted to clarify that.
right. That's correct. Good point, Doug, yeah.
You know, I would just like to say, and John, you were here.
I was.
Okay, this is a public meeting, everything's recorded, right? When we got our approval with this plan right here, we were asked, I was asked, or we were both asked, to come back in and redo it because it was public safety concerns. And we agreed to do it. We came back in, we stopped everything, stopped the financing, held everyone back. We came back and we retooled, come up with the plan, pulled all these single-family lots out away from those pipelines, which is that plan right there. We estimate 4 months downtime for doing that. That's not counting all the money that I spent. You rejected that plan. So then, like, safety concerns wasn't a concern then, but it is now, again. And we're saying right now that that plan takes away all the fears of this pipeline.
A lot of them, yeah.
I don't think fears were always a concern, even back last year. It was always a concern, but at the time, we did not have an ordinance that created a buffer from that pipeline. We did not have that, so we could not impose it on you. So, but there was always a concern. That's why the Plan Commission had concerns with it. I don't think there was recommendations because of it, but it was approved by the process. So I would not say that there weren't safety concerns back then. There was always safety concerns.
Because as of today's date, Doug in his office has redesigned his project almost 13 times. Do you have any idea what that cost me? I mean, I'm not crying.
No,
but I'm just saying, I'm stating it for a fact. 13 times. And 13 times, some people have said no, 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 no.
Well,
So-
I don't think they saw all those revisions,
No,
but
but Mr.
nonetheless.
Barrett, Mr.
If
Barrett,
this was a blank canvas where there was nothing out there, then it'd be a lot easier. But under the circumstances, you've got pipelines, you got everything out there. That's why it's
This
difficult.
is a tough one. This
This
is
is-
tough.
yeah.
This is a tough thing to do. And I'll be the first to admit it. This is hard.
and we have board members that live out there. I understand their concern. It's always been a concern, and we are just trying to do what was based on our rules at the time and what was the best for the community at the time. And so now, things have changed. Concerns are moving to, to try to create a wider buffer, and it's a hard balancing act. That's before this board right now.
Huge buffer there.
But that's not what's being discussed today. All we're discussing is to give you an extension on the existing primary plat. Not that we cannot, probably shouldn't even, all we're considering now is providing you a 6 month, which would be 3 months, if and then you would have to come back in 3 months for another 6 months. Unfortunately, I don't see anything in our ordinance, or Adam Decker hasn't said anything that gives us leeway to change the date due to pandemic or the meeting being canceled. That's why I'm being sympathetic. I know you've lost 3 months because of the pandemic. So I will bring it back to the board. For the board, we just need to sometime make it black and white. It's an extension on the existing plat. I appreciate what Doug and Ms. Barrick have told us, but we need to determine if at this time we want to make a recommendation or entertain a recommendation, knowing what you know now, what they have said in a public meeting, if this board wants to entertain a particular motion. Our options are approve the extension, deny the extension, defer?
I'm
I
not
don't- you-
sure
I don't-
what deferring accomplishes. I think
Yeah.
it's either approve or deny, I think.
Well, again, Mr. Chairman, I would agree with Mr. Eberley. Deferring only kicks the can down the road to next month, and we're having the same discussion. So I don't know that that is a preferred choice tonight.
No, understand. It's a very tough decision for this plan commission.
John, did you say, refresh my memory, did you say an extension has never been denied?
In my tenure, which is, I think, 5 years, I do not recall a extension being denied. I do not recall. I don't know how, we've had a handful, but, I mean, Rick, and you're,
Not in the time I've been here, no.
So what would be your reason for denying it?
it's the pleasure of the board. It is the pleasure of this board, for the reasons I've heard right now, to deny it.
You don't have findings of fact, written findings of fact for this type of request. So you don't have any written guidance, nor in state law that I'm aware of, to guide you in this matter. It's pretty generic language in the ordinance, and Adam read it, that if in the opinion of the Plan Commission it sees fit to extend the approval, you can do so, but there are no standards.
Well, the only standard, and this comes directly from the ordinance, Mr. President, is the Plan Commission finding reasonable grounds therefore, meaning finding reasonable grounds to support the request for the extension. Reasonable grounds is a very broad term, so I submit that it's really left to the discretion of the members, what reasonable grounds would constitute.
And Doug, refresh our memory again, what is the reason for your request for the extension?
Well, we had delays because we tried to rezone. We had financing delays. We can't get financing from a bank until we have the plan that we want to build. And it was changing. It was not finalized until late in the year. Winter hit. We didn't want to start construction over the winter. All of a sudden, then March came and COVID came. So
Okay.
I want to throw something else out there, just see where it goes. If you deferred it tonight for 30 days, and maybe we came in with a plan to rezone the property at the next meeting, living up to our word. You could hear the rezone, at least talk about the rezone, and keep this on the table. Is that a way to maybe?
Well, it's still the fact that you don't control that destiny. You don't control the zoning, so I will tell you here and in front of everybody here, I don't have any doubt in my mind that you would do that you would proceed with this request for a rezoning. And you would make every effort to put this plan into place, the one on the screen, as opposed to the one that's been approved. But even if you have the public hearing next month, the council has to hear it at the end of July and make their decision. And they have up to 90 days from the date of your meeting to grant their approval. So,
I just want to throw it out there.
what it does is show that you're true to your word. And I don't doubt that you're true to your word, so.
But there's just another part of the puzzle. Town council has to approve the zoning,
Yeah.
and that's the dilemma. Or it
I
could be a dilemma.
I don't know how to get around that.
That's why we just want to build the first block.
So I'm playing hypotheticals, just so everyone understands, and it's always a learning experience. Hypothetically, this is denied. So they would have to start from scratch with zoning, or, no, the zoning's already there.
Yeah.
They would just have to start with a new potential plat, or,
They could choose to submit a new plat of some sort, yes, and apply for primary plat approval again. Or they could start with rezoning and do platting after a zoning decision is made.
And what does that do for you, Doug and Mr. Barrick? If, say it was denied, you come back with us with that plat right there, how much, what kind of time are
We
you
would
looking?
probably lose this construction season.
The whole season?
I think so. By the time we would get it approved, we'd be getting probably late in the fall, and I don't know if we could start it, and then expect to get asphalt, and that's what
Right.
we're always fighting. We gotta get asphalt in. And we're at a position now where we can do that, and I'm afraid if we had to come back, especially if we tried to rezone, we wouldn't make that, and then that would delay the project.
Well, not rezone, just replat, because the zoning's there, right?
Well,
No, they need to rezone to
make
put
these
that plat
changes.
into effect,
Oh,
they need to rezone.
because, okay,
So
because
rezoning-
R2 would be eliminated then.
Rezoning, best case scenario is late July, then you do the plat, which gets you into September.
And I'll be honest with all of you, because that's how I work. If it went that way, I would come in with a block one that looks just like that, north of the pipelines, and ask for approval on that. That could be done a little quicker. There's a chance we can get started still, and then we would revisit the south portion, which would entail a rezone. So that would be my first choice if it came down to that. We hope to get the extension and do the exact same thing.
and then, okay, now let's go hypothetical. The motion is approved to extend, then you come in and you do the northern half
We will
of,
final plat just that portion.
and when you say northern half, you're talking about anything that is not hatched darker, correct?
No, no, no.
No, you're just talking northern,
North of the pipeline.
I'm just talking, just so we get clarification.
This will be the dividing line. So north of that line, we will not build this year, we will not plat any of that. We will build and plat just that portion.
And then you would come in for a request for rezone of the hatched area.
We'll prepare engineering drawings that match that, which
Okay.
we still have to come back for that. We understand that.
Okay.
But that gets us moving in the right direction this season, and that's really what we're looking for. I know it's complicated.
No, it's good to know both.
John.
Yep. I'm sorry.
John, this is Yolanda. I'm
Yes.
sorry. For purposes of the people appearing virtually, can you guys highlight Mr. Redding is indicating he would like to move forward with it should this be approved today, the proposal that he's giving us today. If you guys can highlight it just so we see where he's talking about.
How do I?
Rick,
So Yolanda, are you looking at a plat?
I am, yes.
I can give her
Okay,
lot numbers.
anything, so
1 through 23 basically would be the lots.
1 through 23, good, thanks, John. So anything north of the easement,
Okay.
That's not totally true, John. It's 1 through 23 plus 40, 41, 42.
On that drawing, Doug?
Oh, I'm looking at the approved.
I'm
one.
looking at the gray.
John's looking at that one.
Yeah, so then I can't read those lot numbers.
Yeah,
but-
that's 1 through 23.
Yeah, we're looking at two different drawings.
Yeah, 1 through 23.
so Yolanda, they would do 1 through 23 this year, and then what they would propose is they would come in for a rezone, I don't know if you could see the darker hatched area, to rezone those lots, which are currently. what are they?
R2,
They're R2 to a potentially
R3.
R3.
I renumbered them so it would make more sense with the phases. That's why they are numbered consecutive on that plan. So, but that's not with the plan that we already have approved. Different lot numbers, same line, but different lot numbers.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same line of demarcation, but I'll pull this one up. The one that we're actually being, asked to extend the primary plat approval on. I'll come up here.
Right. So that's lots 1 through 20, which are single family, and 40, 41, and 42 are the 3 duplex lots.
But hypothetically, the extension, extension is granted. They come back with a rezoning from R2 to R3. It gets denied. They are still eligible to design it as this original plat.
Like that, yes.
Okay.
As we see right here in
That's
front of
correct.
us.
That's correct.
I just want to make sure the board understands that.
Can you say that again, John?
All right, so they are asking for an extension of their existing plat, which has houses along adjacent to the southern border of the utility easement, the pipe easement. So that's what they're asking for an extension on. They have proposed, if given an extension, that they would start on the northern phase of the development and then come back in and ask for a rezone of the southern half of the development, moving the road to the southern border of the pipe easement, which would meet the new zoning ordinance of
Impact.
the impact. However, it would take those southern lots, which current, I believe, 36 through 31, from R2 to an R3. So the question I proposed was, okay, the extension is hypothetically given. They come back in for that rezoning to move the road to the north to meet the new ordinance of the impact area. However, they do not get the zoning from R2 to R3. They therefore are still legally, can go back to this existing layout, which has a lot on just adjacent to the southern end of the pipeline. Does that make sense, Yolanda? I'm hoping I'm explaining that correctly.
Yeah,
Okay.
it does. The problem, or not the problem, but I think the predicament here is that the concerns of the public are twofold. One is the safety issue, the homes being on the pipeline, and then second, the depreciation of the value of the homes in Three Springs should the developer be allowed to have more duplex homes. And I'm telling you this because I live in Three Springs. Obviously, full disclosure, everybody knows that. I was one of the main people that was saying something about this development, but I think that's the predicament here, that the concerns are twofold. One, safety issue, pipeline. Number two is the depreciation of the value of the homes, by adding duplex homes. So how do we reconcile both of those concerns? I don't know that we can, and I don't know that we're going to come up with something that everybody agrees to tonight. Not something that at least I can think of at this time.
With all due respect to Yolanda, if we build the plan that's approved, and again, we'd rather not build the south end the way it is, these homes on the south side of the pipeline easement will have to be smaller to fit these lots. There's no doubt about it. That will depreciate the home values for the people that have single-family homes in Three Springs. Adding a few more duplex lots, those are not comparable. Half of a duplex unit is not comparable to a single-family home. In my opinion, we will actually be enhancing single-family home values with the revised plan versus the plan that we are asking for the extension on, because we're adding a few duplexes, but those don't compete with the single-family homes. And these lots on the revised plan will be nicer single-family lots. So I'm not trying to argue, I'm just trying to state my opinion on that.
There's duplex lots on Hart Street.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
We built them all.
They're beautiful.
They in no way impact any of the prices on the homes that we've been building now. I mean, they just don't. They're too far away. These few duplex lots in the back, you can't even see them. And as far as where she lives, Yolanda lives, there's going to be a huge buffer of single-family homes between her and these duplexes. And when an appraiser comes out, he does not use a duplex in a comp. He only uses single-family homes. So this myth about these things bringing down property values is not correct. It's just a myth that somebody started. It's not true. Appraisers have to appraise comparable properties. You don't go appraise your house, or Yolanda, and then go back to a townhome that's on Hart Street and say, well, now your value is dropping because of that town. He has to go to single-family homes. I've got homes on the lake right now. I know what that house costs to build that she's in right now. The homes on the lake are way higher than that. So her house is now riding on the backs of my homes on the lake. Everything's over 500,000 now. Okay, so I know what her home sold for. I know what her home was built for. There's a huge increase in equity in that house from when it was purchased to what it's valued at now. Townhomes in Hart Street, they've been there through all of this.
They were there first.
They were there first. So to say that you're worried about a few townhomes on this back row, this back street's going to affect your property values, that is untrue. That's an untrue statement. And it should not be made and like tainting everybody. You know, it's tainting people like, ooh, it's not true. And I'm living it. We've been out there for 13 years. The Pierce people out there have made $100,000 on their home. $100,000. They ain't even been there for 5 years.
Well, tonight, we're not talking about zoning, Mr. Barrick. I appreciate your passion for this, but I would like to bring it back to the board. Again, it's a very tough decision. There's multiple aspects of this: safety, the type of homes going in, whether they're R2 or R3. But right now in front of this board is, are we agreeing or disagreeing to allow an extension of this primary plat?
John, and this is Yolanda again. I didn't mean to make this about myself or about my home. I do apologize for that. I think I'm just echoing what the concerns were before, when this was before the board. But I do want to add that keeping in mind and taking into consideration the property values is one of the board is statutorily required to consider when making like today, obviously it's not before us, but it is making it.
Yolanda, you are breaking in and out. We're hearing every fifth word. Well, Yolanda, we can't hear you right now, and I don't mean to never have to apologize. You are a resident and a valued member of this plan commission, and never have to apologize for the passion that you bring to this board, and especially being a resident in that area. It was a very, and I will use the word contentious, rezone and plat. Most of the board members on here currently were not here. John, I think, Bob, you were here, part of it.
In the beginning.
A lot of us had the exact same concern you had, Yolanda. Unfortunately, our recommendation was not accepted by the town council at the time, and it went through. So, and so never apologize for your comments. They're valid and to the point. And so, again, I will bring it back to the board. Again, the question in front of us with the information you have, but none of the information, I trust, I've known Doug and Ms. Barrick, everything you've said, but there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee. What's in front of us right now is the existing plat that's on the screen, if we're gonna allow a 6-month extension on that. Understanding that the 6 months started in March. So actually, it would only be a 3-month. They can come back in 3 months for another extension, and that's at our discretion. So again, I'll bring it back to the board for a recommendation.
Donna Little, I would make a recommendation to not allow a extension of this plat approval.
I have a motion to deny the extension. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Bob Burleson. Discussion? Just for the general public, my vote might not make you pleasant. I did not approve this when this came through on the plan, when it came for zoning. But at the time, it got approved by our town council. They followed the subdivision ordinance, and in doing so, I approved the plat. They met the ordinance at the time. In my 5 years, I have never had an extension denied, but this is a privy of the board. I am a member. So to the board and the residents, I am concerned about your safety. I am concerned about property value. I try to play fair. I was youngest of 7. I got beat up all the time, but my parents tried to make it as fair as possible. And so with that, any other comments or discussion from the board? With that, roll call.
Mr. Burleson,
Yes.
Ms. Cardona,
I'm here.
Yes or no, Yolanda?
No, I'm sorry.
Wait, Yolanda, you're saying no to the denial of the extension.
I'm sorry. I'm agreeing with Donna's motion.
Okay, so that's a yes.
I apologize.
No, you're fine, Yolanda.
Mr. Gill,
No.
Mr. Gillette,
Yes.
Ms. Little,
Yes.
Ms. Woodland,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
No. Motion passes 5-2. Motion is denied.
You leave me no choice. Nothing personal, but you're leaving me no choice here. You understand that, John?
With the next
I mean-
agenda on, next on the agenda is public comment. Public comment number 7. With that, I'll open it up to the public. Any comments from the public? Going once, going twice. For everyone listening and for the general public, I appreciate your patience. Hopefully, we try to make this as efficient as possible. With that, everyone have a good evening and be safe. Thank you.
John?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Mr. President, I just wanted to thank the board once more for spending all the significant amount of time revising the subdivision control ordinance. Thanks to Mr. Eberley, to Jason, to Bob Davis in Public Works, to John Gill in Building and Planning. I think I said Mr. Eberley, but if I didn't, absolutely. Adam Decker, our attorney, they've done a fine job working this document over the last 5 or 6 months. I really appreciate it, and I'll be happy to bring it in front of the town council.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, we need to make a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I do. I apologize. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I got 1 second.
Second.
There will be no discussion. We're adjourned.